Good morning. This is Shane Starr of Philosophical Reflections on Religion, and today we're asking an important question. Is the universe, or could the universe be, a simulation? In some ways, people might think the city of Irvine, where I am, is a simulation. All the trees are the same height, all the yards are exactly lined up, just like a utopian, or some people might think dystopian movie, but I like it. The people who live here like it. But on to bigger, more important questions. Our universe as a simulation. I think this comes from people experiencing deja vu, vivid dreams that repeat themselves, similar circumstances repeating themselves in life, different people who seem to be the same person, just very slightly different in different stages of your life, maybe. When we think of movies like The Matrix, simulation theory becomes very real in our imaginations, and it's not far of a jump from our imaginations to reality. So as it's consequential to this channel and our line of questioning, what if our universe was or is a simulation, and what impact would that have on Christianity? I think the question is fascinating, but is it consequential is really a more important question. Think about it. If we figured out today the universe was a simulation, what would the changes be? Now, keep in mind, these aren't the same question. Number one, is the universe a simulation or not? That's left to be determined. But if it is, or if it was, what are the changes? I think the big questions still remain. Why does anything exist at all? Why is there consciousness? Why is there morality? Why should we behave or live in a certain way? I think my first point on this whole simulation question is, while it is fascinating, it is not consequential. Changing the stage we experience life on doesn't change the play. It's still life. It's still life as we know it, whether it's a simulation or not. That would be my first point. And I think probably in some ways that's the point that drives the whole video. I'd say point two is that whether the universe is or isn't a simulation, maybe this should have been point one, I think it's still debatable. I know astrophysicists such as Neil deGrasse Tyson have suggested that the universe is a simulation. I know Elon Musk has suggested that also. And I know this hypothesis is popular in philosophy, even in science. I think it's still speculative. I know on Instagram I've read several posts lately seeming and claiming to be scientific. Who knows how real it really is, but these posts claim that there's a group of physicists who have mathematically ruled out a fully algorithmic simulation of our universe. They're saying that it's mathematically impossible that we live in a simulation. I don't know how one could prove that. Maybe it goes beyond my capabilities. But again, given my first point, I would say, so what? Okay, if it's true, it's true. If it's not, it's not. For me, something more interesting is at stake here. And I think not only could the universe be a simulation, I think that the way Christianity describes ultimate reality, if Christianity is true, then the universe as we know it is indeed a simulation, or at least something like one. and this isn't a new revolutionary idea. Think of Plato's shadows, with the people in the cave. They experience the shadows, but reality is something different. Bishop Berkeley, one of the famous rationalists, along with David Hume, preceding Kant and Descartes, Berkeley thought that everything, all empirical things that we can see, feel, touch, that wasn't real, that reality was part of our minds, which are part of a cosmic universal mind, which Berkeley identified as God. I think when we look at basic Christian theology, we see it described as heaven being ultimate reality. Earth, the universe as we know it, is creation. It's temporary. By definition, what is a simulation? By definition, it is a representation of a real world process, system, or environment. And if the universe indeed is a creation, then it's not a far stretch to call it a simulation of sorts. So when we hear the word simulation, we usually think of computers, but in Christianity, the core principle or concept endures, and that is a reality we experience that in many ways is an expression of the ultimate reality that stands with God outside of time and space. And then that makes our material existence something of a shadow, to use Platonic terms, or an image or a reflection, all of something greater. Now, again, you can either call it simulation or you can call it creation. To me, they go hand in hand. They're not much different. I would think in this sense, one of the things that gave rise to this video was me feeling sometimes like life is a video game, and someday I'm going to wake up out of it, and on earth the other people will experience that as my death. For me, I'll be waking up like, oh wow, that was an interesting game. More on that later, but the point is that simulation and creation are not as different as most people would think at face value. Okay, my next point 4. Again, going back to the idea of simulations as most people think of them, I would say Christianity rejects an infinite chain of simulations. The idea that this is a simulation inside a simulation, inside a simulation, inside a simulation, so on and so forth forever. This is analogous to a lamp hanging from an endless chain. I've already dealt with that in previous videos, like my original video for this series. I think ultimately there has to be a first cause, a necessary being, whether it's physical, digital, mathematical. There must be an ultimate foundation to reality. By definition, a simulation is a simulation of something real, something more, something grounded, something that's there. It cannot go on forever. I mean, I'll make a simple argument here. Presuming it did go backwards forever, why hasn't it reached its end yet? It's just mental gymnastics. I think it's much more rational to assume a beginning, one that stands outside the system as a whole, that which would be an unmoved mover in Aristotle's words, and God in our words, an ultimate foundation. A simulation still requires something that's unsimulated. Okay, so back to one of my original points, my main point perhaps, is that whether we live in a simulation or not, I think I've already shown that it doesn't matter, but just to hit that point home, Christian life doesn't change. If we were discovered to be living in a simulation now, would love disappear? No. Would justice disappear? No. Would forgiveness disappear? No. Would Christ's command to love God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself, would that disappear? Absolutely not. The way we live would and should remain exactly the same. And I think going back to my idea of waking up from this life in the other world, perhaps in the real world that this is just a simulation of, what would we think? I think if I discovered this life was a simulation, I would thank God for the grace God gave me to right my wrongs and live the way I'm living now. And in hope, if this is somewhat of a video game, I would want to be able to say I played well. Maybe that's another way of saying, well done, my good and faithful servant. You can enter into heaven. That would be every Christian's dream, right? But ultimately, when you ask yourself about is this a simulation or not, the two things I want to leave you with is, number one, the difference between simulation and creation is negligible. And number two, more importantly, Christianity asks of us not what kind of world are you living in, but what kind of person are you becoming. That's all I have for this week. See you guys next week. Not sure what I'm going to do yet, but I'll think of something fun. God bless.